Andrew, one of the questions that people express to me, and I think is on a lot of people's minds, and you touched on a little bit, but like, what's the plan where it's like, do you wait? Are you prepared to wait till it happens? Or,
No.
some people don't, there's all sorts of different timelines. When do you abandon ship, or could we be wrong? Well, hello there, my friends. Chris Marcus here with you for Arcadia Economics. And fortunately, I'm joined by my friend Andrew O'Donnell of SuperCharged Stocks to talk about Tesla, Amazon earnings. No, I'm just kidding. We're digging into silver, mining stocks. I think Andrew's going to touch on a couple other commodities so we can broaden our horizons a little bit today. Andrew, great to have you on the show. Happy holidays. Hope everything is going well with you, and welcome on in.
Beautiful. It's a wonderful day here in Vancouver. Always a pleasure to be here, Chris. I appreciate you having me on the show, and I love chatting with you. It's good to riff on some ideas and to look and see what the last year has been and what we're looking forward to in 2021. It's going to be quite a year. I'm pretty pumped.
Yeah, well, I love your backdrop there, especially.
Yeah.
I signed a 6-month lease here in Austin, and then planning to head up to Vancouver in, now 5 months from now. So it looks lovely there. And
I got space here. You have to be in here then.
Yeah, we can get one of those boats, float around there, talk mining stocks.
That's the key. You can actually pull a boat up to the lower level down below. So just arrive on boat, step into the office. It'll be perfect.
Okay, so maybe we'll plan an episode for June. We'll film it from the boat, talk some silver, and all right. If we're gonna do that, let's say we're recording from the boat in June. What do you think the silver price is?
All right, I think, you know what? I'm gonna go a little bit more conservative. I think it's not gonna quite break 30, but I'm gonna hope it's up around the 29. I think there's a good chance it passes that 30 for next year into next new range. I see it in clearly as the range it's in right now, but that's my hope. 60% of it is used industrial, and then we can see from the stimulus package, and we can see with Biden certainly, that there's going to be a huge green initiative, and we need a lot of silver for solar panels and everything else, and there's lots of industrial function. But no, let alone just the precious, the fiat currency debacle, the printing of extraordinary amounts of money. It bodes very well. I always like to be a little bit more conservative, but yeah, I think we'll be close to that 30, but that's going to be such a big number of resistance anyway. Once we can hurdle that, then we're jumping into a new range. So I hate being a price predictor to that extent, but I'm going to say 29. Let's go. I'm going to do it. 29.67.
Oh, I like that. 29.67 it is. Well, I mean, it's a little bit of an unfair question because really, if there's ever been a market where it's hard to know what the price will be, again, as a former option trader and student, it was helpful to learn to think of things in terms of probabilities where, I think there's one day that people are around the globe are going to say, we don't want these dollars anymore. And, so when that happens, I just try and think of these things in terms of probability. Fun, especially if you get into that, what was it, Nassim Taleb Black Swan book?
Yes.
Andrew, would you agree that when you combine some probability with a sector that even Ben Bernanke admitted he doesn't understand anything about gold?
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's some mispricing if, no one I met on Wall Street seemed to get it either. So can you stack things in your favor that you can become the blackjack table rather than the guy playing at the blackjack table?
I think so, because it is. I mean, it's a tough market, and we hear, on the manipulation in silver and gold as well. To me, it is 100% a probabilities game, and it's a matter of not taking in too much information almost, because there's so much going on. It's really hard. So I try to take a step back and go macro level. What's the need on this? What are the requirements? And then try to put a probability on it. And there's just so much news as far as people becoming more aware and more awake. And it isn't just gold bugs, silver bugs, the mining, which is such a small sector. It's more and more commonplace that people are questioning, like, can you just keep printing all this money? And when that happens, most people kind of think, that doesn't seem legit. Can we keep doing this? And that's more of a question that I encourage people is, there's a lot of bad questions being asked nowadays. And that one of the ones, not to pick on a topic, is, well, why would they lie to me? I get that one every day. Well, why would they lie to me? And I'd say to people, that's not the question you should ask. The question should be, I'd like to see the data, or I'd like to see some numbers. I'd like to see some information. I can list you about 14 different reasons off the top of my head why someone might lie to you. So that's not the right question. So with anything is, what's the data suggesting? And right now, with enough people waking up on a retail level scale as to the issues that are out there, that are blatantly in front of our face, people have to wonder, like, do I want to sit in cash? Like, does that sound like a great idea? Not to me.
Yeah, well, certainly we got another news announcement this week. I believe $900 billion for COVID relief. None of the articles I've mentioned yet say where the money is going to come from. In my it's been a while since, but my old academic MBA studies, remember there's generally 3 ways you can fund when the government spends. You can tax, borrow, or print. I don't know. I guess they may raise taxes. We're already dwarfing. We had like the Boston Tea Party, I believe, was like a couple basis points compared to this. I don't know if China, after being labeled a currency manipulator and having a trade war stuck in their face, regardless of who one may think is right or not, for whatever that's worth, probably not lining up to say, like, yeah, let's fund the debt, and then guessing it's going to be printed. What do you see there?
I mean, you enter into the realm of the quote unquote conspiracy theory talk, which for the most part, a lot of it isn't even conspiracy anymore. I mean, I remember even saying to people, here's the World Economic Forum, and they're talking about a Great Reset, and people are like, oh, I don't listen to any of that conspiracy crap. I'm like, it's on their website. Or the IMF, you can go read it, and they're like, oh, no, that's not real. I'm like, the IMF just did an article on the Great Reset. So a lot of these things that people were once saying, this is just silly, conspiracy theories, are turning out to be pretty on track. But that also means that we've got a lot of possible solutions. What this is, I mean, I'm going to venture and say, if you have a lot of people on board with this concept of the Great Reset, and certainly Trudeau is 100% on board, then you would just spend wildly because whatever that's going to look like, it's coming. And I get the impression that it's like it just seems like everybody's like, well, let's just keep printing more and more and more and more. And you do that if you knew that there was something coming. And obviously I'm not privy to that level of conversation, but it just seems at the rate that everyone's just printing, and we're not dealing with the reality. Everyone likes to talk about, well, look at the stock market. The stock market is doing great. Well, the stock market has almost nothing to do with the individual person out there. Most of them don't own any individual stock. Very few have any basket of stocks. They might have a pension that has some stocks in it, but we're talking about the very small portion of people that actually have active stock portfolios they're doing anything with. So there isn't even, I would say, an argument to be made that the stock market has any correlation with how any specific country is doing, Canada or the US. So
why would that matter?
Why would that matter? Yeah. So we're in this magical world of anything can happen, and it is truly bizarre because if you look at any data or anything, you have to scratch your head and go, I don't understand this. And unfortunately, we've had people say, we've even had big companies coming out saying, I don't understand why this is behaving like this. And that's never a good thing to hear if you hear JP Morgan or Goldman Sachs say, we don't understand why this market's behaving like this. We don't understand why this, because how could it? It makes no sense. So in that case, the best thing I could do is go buy stuff we're going to use. And that's, unfortunately, that isn't imaginary stuff. It's, I want to own the stuff that's, regardless, it's going to be infrastructure if it's super boring. Okay, so I want to own copper just simply for infrastructure. And then, gold and silver, for obvious reasons, it just has wealth, always has, no matter what story that changes over hundreds of years and decades and everything that people say, oh, we're never going to use it again. We've heard that story a million times before, and I'm sure 1,000 years from now, if we're still here, we're going to hear about how precious metals have no value as well. They always will.
Yeah, I mean, in fact, as you were describing it, would you say it's analogous to someone who has a lot of debt and they're just running up the credit cards because they know they're going to declare bankruptcy?
Yeah.
So they max out as many as possible before doing that?
Yeah, and then they'll call later and say, well, you should have known better than to offer me more money. It is your fiduciary responsibility to cut me off. Like, it is. It's like, I might as well keep going. I owe this much. Well, let's just rack it up because I have no intentions of paying it, or whatever this reset's going to look like. That portion's not going to count anymore. To me, that's just it's a guess, and I don't know. But that's what it seems like the behavior is. I can wildly spend if I know that I'm never going to be accountable for it. But even when I think of that, it keeps me up at night because I think of, well, what could this quote unquote great reset look like? Like, I'm sure if you think of like a complicated options position that you have to unwind, just one, what that would entail. Like, you look at these investment banks that go in and they go, oh my God, this rogue trader did this and it's just a nightmare. One trade. Now do that for everything. Like, what does that entail?
Well, I think like you pointed out where, we saw the Davos Great Reset. We heard people suggest, I guess it was the Q crowd, saying that Trump was going to do a reset and put us back on the gold standard. But like you said, if you just look at the forensic data, it's like it's not like these are the questions that I wish everything you're saying was what was being discussed during the campaigns, during the debates, where, in fact, I have something I would love to share with you in the first episode in public, Andrew, if I may.
Yes.
So, even within the gold, silver, Bitcoin, whatever truth community, it's like all this, we talk a lot about gold or silver and the dollar going to collapse, and rightfully so, yet I'm not saying there's nobody out there who's done it, but I don't know anyone who's like, all right, let's say that China crashed this thing tomorrow. What do we actually do? Which fortunately, Silver Chris is on that, because I was thinking, gee, with all the people that we talk to and have these conferences with, all right, fine, this and that, government does this. There's some point where like, yeah, it's frustrating or whatever, but like at some level, well, and I think these are the things that, why it's like I tune out of Washington, because it's like you either know that the dollar's in trouble or you should know, and how come it's not even thought of. But fortunately, I guess this is the advantage, we can not dwell on them, but fortunately people can plan ahead. It's not, and on top of it, I know it's hard to believe it's happening now, but this is really a repetitive pattern that has happened over and over again. And if we accept that, maybe governments would be great if the fair outcome happened, but we can see what's going to happen. And how do you respond to that?
Yeah, I think people are best to individually sort out their own solution, because there's very few serious conversations that are coming out of Washington. If this was 20 years ago and you're facing this kind of fiscal crisis, it would be not only the hot topic, it's the topic. It's what are we going to do? And now it's kind of like, well, we've got to talk about wearing a mask.
It's like, where are the beat inflation pins? Where's the rallies for the debt?
Yeah, we got to get this under control to save our country. That's not even a question anymore. It's like, maybe we're not even a country anymore. Maybe we're just an idea. Like, it's the world has gotten so crazy that a lot of time it's distraction, which always makes me wonder something else is going on. It's this constant talk about, oh God, here I go. A mask, and I'll just say, just send me the data on the efficacy of a mask, and I'm happy to look at it. And that's the topic of conversation for people. And then it's devolved from anything of real value. Can we please talk about science and data? To nothing. And that we're not even talking about the financial backbone of a country which is deteriorating rapidly. And no one wants to seem to focus in on that real issue. It's, I'm going to turn my neighbor in because they're not wearing a mask and they invited 3 friends over for the holidays. Like,
Andrew,
that's literally where we're living. I'm going to turn my neighbor in. Like, what?
well, fortunately, these are the kind of things that I anticipate will just be solved by QE6 from the Fed.
Yeah.
What would you say, we'll stick with some probabilities, have a little fun today.
Yeah.
What would you say is the likelihood that the Fed does quantitative easing in 2021?
100%. Let's put a 99.8, let's say. I say there's more money coming. So, and unfortunately, it's not for us, right? I mean, people are still trying to get, there's now a $900 stimulus check. But if you happen to be FANG or some of these bigger companies, sure, we'll lend you, a couple billion for 0%. In fact, we'll give it to you for minus 0.5%. So we'll pay you an extra percent to take this money from us.
Yeah. So, fortunately, I think the good news is that, yes, there's people like me who dream of silver above $50, which I still think is a safe bet in the long term. I think the Fed guarantees that at some point. If somebody doesn't, well, what point is that? I don't know. And I'm not going to make up a date yet. Even you mentioned before, you see, let's say silver, 6 months from now is around $29. How does that look for a lot of these silver mining companies, especially, and maybe you could talk about the producers. I think you've broken this down before, but if you could dig into that, what does that look like at $29 silver, for example, for a First Majestic, some of these other companies?
Well, this is what's weird. I mean, they should be trading up right now anyway, which they're not, which it's, once again, this world we live in is very strange. I think I try to be much more cautious with price. I mean, but it should be a lot higher. So silver should be a lot higher. I believe it's going, and this isn't a small trend. And I'm not a trader type. Like, I don't go in and out daily. I don't go in and out weekly. I look for things and then I just build positions over the course of a year or 2 years. So I'm a long-term fella. So I'm in no rush. And for me, because I love looking at data, I won't change my mind all the time. Because if I cool the brakes and go, wait, you're in this thing for 6 months, 8 months, 9 months, unless it's something dramatic that hasn't changed or steered the course of my decision-making, we're going this way. And silver producers are going to have some great numbers, and we're seeing a lot of projects. There's a lot of projects coming on board right now. Constant deal flow comes through, from different brokers and different firms and different opportunities, private placements, nonstop. And Mexico's a hotbed for it. And whether you're talking, mag silver or Reina silver, wheat and precious metals, if you want that type of thing, all of these things, I hate saying should be, but they should be at better prices right now, in a world that made sense. So for me, I'm a fundamental guy, and I have to go back with reminding myself a lot of the stuff that I'm seeing out there gets shifted to the noise section. Like, this isn't really quote unquote data. This is a lot of noise while we're trying to ascertain where we're actually going. And then of course, there's no hint as to what this rate reset or where we're going, but I can safely assume it's not going to be for our best interest necessarily, but also the least amount of harm. And I think that those that are in commodities are protecting themselves against that, because even when you hear some of the things like, you hear some stories of, listen, the IMF will give you money, or the UN will give you money, we'll let you away with your student debt, but for that, you're signing up for this, and this. I mean, you're not getting anything for nothing. So those sound appealing on one side for a young crowd that goes, I own $80,000 in student debt. They're willing to take it away, and all I have to do is sign this and this. Well, you've just locked yourself in. You've bought yourself an option. It's not an attractive one, but you've bought it. You don't know you've bought it. And that to me sounds like something that's coming down the pipeline for the vast majority of people, is some sort of sweet silver lining that's just, it's a very, very small margin of potential upside, while we're going through a massive upheaval where trillions will be made. And I see that they're carving out for that smaller percentage an opportunity, never mind in energy and in commodities, that is just going to reshape the world. So I see this as being, and I talked about it last year, as I called it the roaring 20s and the Great Depression all rolled into one. And I don't see that changing. That's kind of my talk again for this year, is that, there's going to be a lot of hardship and suffering for a lot of people out there. And the mental health and the stress that's going on right now for most people is really high. And that's going to continue because we haven't dealt with any reality. We haven't dealt with the financial issues that have come up. And a lot of people get distracted by the fact that, oh, but look, Tesla's gone up, or NIO's gone up, or this company has gone from $20 to 40. But maybe you made a couple $1,000 on it. Maybe if you're lucky and you're active, but most people aren't paying attention to that.
Yeah, I mean, that's the challenge. I mean, there's a ton about nuclear physics that I'm not up to on. Yeah. I mean, that's why I appreciate guys like you come on the show, and what I try to provide each night, so that, like the nightly news where, we stick to silver a lot, but hopefully there's some insight that can be applied to other markets. Even though I go mostly silver, I'm not saying everybody should do that. Although, Andrew, one of the questions that people express to me, and I think is on a lot of people's minds, and you touched on a little bit, but like, what's the plan where it's like, do you wait? Are you prepared to wait till it happens? Or, some people don't, there's all sorts of different timelines. I kind of talk people out of silver if I ever hear someone saying like, well, next, how do I make money fast? I'm like, I don't know. I think the payoff in the end, that's why I compare it to The Big Short all the time. I think it's going to be exactly similar to that.
Yes.
When do you abandon ship, or could we be wrong?
Well, I mean, also wrong is a tough one, because I don't think that the overall thesis is wrong. But can the Fed and the powers that be, with tons of very bright people, create something and save this situation? I'm sure they're wheeling and dealing right now. But for me, I think I've set myself up, and I'm happy to and we won't dwell on it too much, but because I'm commodities based, but also focused on innovation, I've got a helium company that I love. It's called Desert Mountain Energy. I think 2021 is going to be outstanding. The reason why you should care about helium isn't because they're blowing balloons up in the air and it's party time, and you're making funny voices by inhaling the stuff. It's because for all of your, even for your Bitcoin, if you want to create, mine for cryptos, you need to, the NVIDIA cards, you need these huge processing centers that create a ton of energy and a ton of heat, and you need helium to cool them down. So helium is a high-tech coolant. It's used in thermal nuclear reactors. It's used in MRIs, and it's massively used in big data storage centers. And of course, big data is a big deal. That's a big theme for the future. It's this innovation play, this big data, 5G, the cloud, all this. You need a ton of helium to keep coolants. So I love it. They're on track. They've been doing amazing things. I think they're going to have a stellar year. The other one, hopefully no
COMEX futures on helium.
Well, helium is such a tough one too, because that one it went up like 3 times before COVID, and it's a tough one because it's a byproduct of natural gas. And the biggest helium producers, they're secondary producers, and you're looking at the giant energy oil and gas plays. But because they haven't been pumping out as much, they're not producing as much helium as well. Whereas Desert Mountain Energy is a primary helium producer of high grade. It's not just low grade that they just cut off and it's part of the whole natural gas process. This is really high grade or potentially high grade. They're an exploration company. So I like that. We get into a bit more complicated talk, but it's a pure play, high grade helium, which is what we're looking for, what you really want. And instead of just looking, when I look at innovation, of going, well, just buy Amazon because they're in that space. They're in big data. That is ugly. I know that big data is being used, but what are the component pieces that make big data applicable? Things like some of these companies, like FANG companies, as I'm openly not a big fan of, has stated that they're going to be a lot greener. So they're even talking about making their buildings greener, which means you can use a type of biofiber in cement to make the emissions lower in a building. There's a lot of concrete in cities, and it's a lot of emissions, so a lot of carbon. So there's solutions like that where I go, oh, interesting. Well, maybe I'll take a look at biofiber. And that's how my brain gets excited, and I start looking down that path instead of just, well, I'll just go buy Amazon. And it's the same thing. Instead of when people look at innovation, they go, well, I'll just buy Tesla. You go, okay, I'm glad that you're interested in Tesla. That's great. But I'm more interested in just 48 kilograms of copper in a Tesla. Whoa, okay, that's twice as much in a regular car. So how many cars are you going to kick out? And then there's NIO, and there's this. So I go, well, I guess I'd much rather own the copper right now, because if things go to shit, I want to own the stuff that makes stuff. I don't necessarily want to own the Apple. I want to own the stuff that makes every component piece of Apple. Because then I don't care if Apple wins. It can be anyone that wins and sells the product. But if the innovation makes sense and we're going that direction, I want to own those component pieces. And luckily for us, mining's been so punched up for years. I mean, it's been on an uptrend the last year, that you can get into a lot of amazing companies that have extraordinary management teams if you put a little work in, and make multiples. Like, you can do really well. And then, you know, and luckily I've worked with a bunch of them already, and there's lots of ones looking forward in the new year. And it's just, you know, kind of deciding, do you believe in this, where things are going, whether you like it or not? Like, do you believe in this 5G future city with, you know, electrification of the future, and we're going to do this and that? So, you know, I've got my vanadium company, which is also this vanadium redux story, but I also have a gas story. That's just you know, it's Vanadium Corp. And then I've got a gas company called NG Energy, which is solely Colombia focused gas, natural gas. And some people will kind of scratch their heads and go, well, Andrew, you're a battery energy metals guy. You love copper. You love all of these things for batteries. Why are you talking about gas? And you go, well, because we're always going to use gas, for one. Two, the developing world has to transition. More, we haven't even transitioned in the West yet. I mean, 80% of energy comes from oil and gas. So we're in a transition period. So there's a ton of opportunity there to make money. And Colombia is specifically, because I think 50% of their energy comes from electricity, but that electricity is created from natural gas. So, you know, when you hear people talk about green and we're going to do this and that, that's like the first layer of the onion of totally understanding, well, what does that actually mean? Where do you get that energy from? And whether you look at the Great Depression or you look at other times of big upheaval and shift, energy has always been there. And I see this big shift of energy, that's all commodities based, and people are kind of toeing in there going, maybe I should spend a bit of time looking at this.
Yeah, well, it's interesting you mentioned that. I spend more time on silver, but get the feeling it's like a lot of the entire commodities complex seems like it's been affected one way or another. And yeah, it certainly seems like when you look at commodity versus Wall Street paper, there some point is going to be a massive snapback, and will be fun to see how it develops. Perhaps, Andrew, you could let folks know how they can stay tuned. I like that you're digging into some other markets, so to get some non-silver exposure ideas, where do they find you, and what's the address?
Yeah, check me out, SuperCharged Stocks. I've got a YouTube as well, and it's growing. And check out my website. Oh, there I am. Look at that happy guy.
Like that jacket. There's a silver chain you're wearing there, right?
The silver there.
There you go.
It's I'm you know, it's my, what do you call it? Programming there. So, you know, predictive programming. So yeah, check out the site. Engage me. Send me a message. Send me a text. I let people know, like and I'll be doing a couple of videos soon saying this is why I liked these 3 companies last year, and this is how they've done. Here's the 3 for next year. I'm giving those away. I mean, I've kind of, you know, taken the cat out of the bag by saying Desert Mountain Energy, NG Energy, and Vanadium Corp. But tune in to find out why. Ask me why, and yeah, check it out. You know, I'm building, so I like to give it away, and I've had lots of success on ones last year and the year before. So I see this as being, and I have to always say, is a very difficult period of time for most people. However, if you are focused and you're a critical thinker and you're curious about a lot of things, this is a massive opportunity in decades, in time, where you can literally change the course and trajectory of your life. And I don't mean that in a promotional way. I'm not that kind of guy. But this really is, things are moving fast and they're changing fast. And I think if people can really ignore a lot of the noise, Focus on science, focus on data, focus on numbers. Try to keep those fundamentals, not get carried away. Follow a model, don't change it. Keep your thesis unless something is literally affects it, and then hold strong. You're going to do well, and I consider short term a year. So in the course of a year, you're going to do very well. In 2 or 3, it's going to be phenomenal. So if you can just stay strong during this period of time and remind yourself to that this is such a key point in history, then I think there'll be lots of spoils.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, anytime you can see what's coming, and the markets will have their own timing, but I mean, there's enough going on that I think people can see there's some shift in the world, and will be fun to follow along. So Andrew, thank you again for joining me here today. Happy holidays, and perhaps maybe you can just call that guy in that little boat that's sailing behind there right now, see if he book us a spot mid-June, and I will talk to you soon, my friend.